My name is Alta Matos, and I'm 31. If you've ever stood in a familiar room and realized it's a stage for a play you never agreed to perform in, you already know how this starts. I used to think the truest place on earth was 12 acres of pine and lake light called Lake Harrison. Grandpa Will would wake me before dawn. Up, kiddo, the water's holding its breath, and we'd glide out in the rowboat until the sky turned the color of a bruise healing. He taught me the kind of skills that make adulthood feel survivable. How to fix a hinge, how to sand with the grain, how to listen twice for every once that you speak. My parents, Robert and Patricia, had a calendar full of fundraisers and auctions and winter galas. My older sister, Michelle, was the prodigy. Honor cords, clerkships, a corporate attorney whose compliments arrived pre-packaged with advice I hadn't asked for. But Grandpa, he saw me. Not my potential, me. When he died 2 years ago, the will read like breathing, the cabin and the land to me, because he wrote, I loved it for what it is, not for what it could be sold for. My parents received his investment portfolio, far more than the cabin's value. Michelle got his classic cars and a generous cash sum. No one argued. I thought that meant we were safe. For 2 years, I poured myself into that place, restored the paneling with the same linseed mix Grandpa swore by, rebuilt the deck plank by plank, started a garden with paper packets scrawled in his handwriting. Kentucky Wonder, Cherokee Purple, Marigold, keeps the Beatles honest. I drove there every weekend, sometimes with Liam, my boyfriend, who learned the rhythm of the dock boards and my worst coffee. He'd say, your shoulders dropped 3 inches somewhere past mile marker 20. And I'd laugh because he was right. Lake Harrison was the only place in my life that didn't ask me to prove anything. 3 weeks ago, my mother called with her "Sweetheart, we're worried" voice. Family dinner, she said. It's about traditions. Traditions is what my mother says when she's already made a decision. I walked into my parents' dining room and knew immediately. Ambush. Michelle sat straight-backed, with a folder clamped like a verdict. My father had documents spread across the table the way other men display weapons. My mother's hands were folded in soft sorrow, her costume jewelry of empathy. Alta, my father began, businessman calm, we're concerned about your stewardship of the family property. My what? You've changed the locks, Michelle said, sliding a folder toward me, excluded the family from holidays, and appear to be commercializing the cabin. I laughed. It came out sharp, like glass. I changed the locks because the old set was from 1987 and stuck if you breathed wrong. I mailed everyone new keys. You both RSVP'd no for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the only commerce happening is between me and the hardware store. That's not the point, my mother said, eyes shining like an actress at curtain. The point is legacy. Your grandfather would be devastated to see you hoarding the place. The word hit like a slap. Hoarding. I had spent 2 winters with a heat gun and a prayer coaxing paint off window trim. I had treated rot, replanted saplings, logged hours that could have been billable in Michelle's world. We think, my father said, tapping the papers, the cabin should be transferred to a family trust. Equal say for all of us. Sensible oversight. No. The word was calm, round. Grandpa left it to me because he knew I would take care of it. Michelle's voice shifted into the cool register she uses in depositions. There are questions about Grandpa's mental state when he amended his will, early signs of cognitive decline. You were alone with him a great deal. A court could view that as undue influence. My chair scraped back. He was lucid. His doctor said as much. Michelle didn't blink. Courts don't need certainty, Alta. Just doubt. Sit down, sweetheart, my mother murmured, as if I were the one out of control. No one wants a scandal. This is about unity. Unity. Like a net that looks silk until you try to breathe in it. I scanned their faces. My father's stone, my mother's practiced grief, Michelle's clinical patience. Somewhere under my ribs, a small, stubborn pilot light held. You want a trust? I said. Build one for Dad's portfolio you already got. The cabin stays with me. My father's jaw worked once. If you force us, we'll litigate. Do whatever you need to do. My voice surprised us all by staying steady. But understand, I will burn every spare minute and dollar I have to honor what he left me. I left the folder on the table and walked out. Liam texted from the driveway. Do you want me there? I typed back, no, not this one, and drove. Past the mile marker where my shoulders usually dropped, I cried so hard my chest hurt. I slept that night on the couch at the cabin with windows cracked to the lake's wet breath, and the old wood held me like a story that knows its ending. By Tuesday, the letters arrived, thick with threat. Demand for access. Notice of intent to contest. Failure to maintain as a family asset. Michelle's signature looked like a gavel. Then the whispers started, the kind that travel faster than truth. Alta's become unstable since William died. She won't let her own parents set foot on the property. I heard from a cousin that my Christmas absence was dissected at the country club like a rare specimen. My mother's line, "We're so worried about her," landed to perfect effect. And then there was Vanessa. Liam's ex has a talent for arriving where microphones already exist. A benefit, a brunch, a fitness studio launch with a step and repeat. She posted a soft focus story sipping iced tea with two women who lunch with my mother, and the caption read, "Some people isolate the ones who love them most. Healing means letting go of control." She never tagged me. She never has to. That's her art. I started to doubt myself the way they wanted me to. Had I been selfish without meaning to be? Had I clung too tightly to a place that was supposed to be shared? The cabin creaked in the night like an old friend clearing his throat to speak. I remembered Grandpa sanding that dock rail with me until dusk and saying, "You don't let go of what's honest, kiddo. You hold it until your hands know the shape." On Thursday, I sat in Jennifer Martinez's office with a folder of my own, copies of invitations I'd sent for holidays, photos of the new locks and the key envelopes addressed to my parents and to Michelle, receipts from every repair. Jennifer is the kind of attorney who wears unfussy suits and listens the way a surgeon counts beats. After 20 minutes of questions, she leaned back. "They think they can intimidate you into a trust transfer," she said. "They also think the words undue influence will scare you into a settlement. Do not speak to them directly. Everything through me. I want every invitation you sent, every declined RSVP, and any text where they refer to the cabin's market value." Market value? She tapped the demand letter. People don't invent mental decline out of love. They do it out of money. That night, back into the cabin, I found Liam sitting on the steps with 2 paper cups of awful diner coffee and the look he reserves for when he knows I'm about to pretend I'm fine. He didn't ask what they'd said. He didn't say Vanessa's name. He just took my hand and traced the old splinter scar at the base of my thumb. "They're going to try to turn you into a story that isn't yours," he said. "Let me be your witness." The moon was a nickel in the black. The garden rows were dark muscle laid over the soil. Somewhere a loon sang its lonely joke. I let my shoulders finally drop. The next morning, Jennifer's email pinged. "We're ready to respond. I'm also pulling medical records and the will file. One more thing. Check if your grandfather ever kept a safety deposit box." The message sat there, blue and ordinary, while something inside me woke up and stretched. Because if Grandpa saw this coming, and I could hear his voice, dry and certain, "They'll come for it, kiddo, because some folks can't tell the difference between a place and a price. Then maybe he left me more than a cabin. Maybe he left me the map." For a week, everything went quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes your skin itch because you know it's not peace. It's plotting. Then, one night, my phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. It was Sarah, my cousin, the one person from the extended family who'd never bought into my parents' Alta's ungrateful narrative. "Can we meet? Not at your place. Somewhere private." We met at a half-empty diner off Route 15, the same one Grandpa used to take us to for pie after fishing trips. She looked pale, her hands trembling around her mug. "I shouldn't be doing this," she whispered, "but you need to know what I found." Sarah told me she'd been at the Christmas party, where, apparently, my mental state was the main course. My mother had gotten tipsy, bragging to our aunt about years of documentation that proved I manipulated Grandpa. Out of morbid curiosity, or maybe loyalty, Sarah asked to see it. Mom had pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails like souvenirs. While my father toasted family unity, Sarah quietly forwarded every one of those emails to herself. She slid her phone across the table to me. Inbox. Patricia Matos. Subject lines. Strategy, will issue. Narrative building. Potential developer interest. I scrolled through line after line and my stomach turned to lead. Michelle. Mom, Dad, Alta's spending another weekend alone at the cabin. Perfect. Keep track of those visits. If we can frame it as isolation of a vulnerable elder, that helps our case later. Mom. Agreed. I'll make sure everyone at the club knows how worried we are about her mental state. It will sound natural when this comes up legally. Dad, Thomas Anderson says 1.8 M minimum for the acreage if rezoned. Let's keep playing the long game. Patience, equal payout. My hands started shaking. My own family wasn't just plotting to take the cabin. They were building a legal paper trail to destroy me. Sarah reached across the table. There's more. She showed me one from last year. Michelle, if she refuses mediation, we'll file claiming undue influence and hint at predatory behavior. We don't need proof, just suspicion. I felt like I was going to throw up. Predatory behavior? I managed to say. They were planning to call me a predator? Sarah nodded. I think they were counting on your quietness, the way you don't fight back. They thought you'd freeze. I didn't freeze. I called Jennifer. By morning, she had the emails backed up and printed. This isn't just defamation, she said. This is calculated conspiracy and attempted fraud. Then she asked the question that changed everything. Alta, have you ever seen your grandfather's safety deposit box? I hadn't. I didn't even know where it was. But Grandpa was meticulous, the kind of man who labeled every key with red tape and notes in neat block letters. I tore through the cabin until I found an old metal tin behind his workbench. Inside, spare screws, a faded photo of him and Grandma, and one brass key tagged Harrison Bank Box 327. Jennifer drove up that afternoon. We opened the box together. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name in his handwriting, and a smaller folder labeled Medical Documentation and Witness Certifications. I opened the letter first. Alta, if you're reading this, it means they've come for what they never built. Don't be afraid. I saw this coming years ago. That's why I had 3 doctors verify my mental capacity and kept duplicates of every file. I know how your parents and Michelle think. Money first, meaning last. But you, kiddo, you've always known the worth of things that can't be priced. Keep the cabin. Keep the peace of this place. They'll try to twist it. Let the truth be your anchor. Love, Grandpa Will. I couldn't read the rest through the blur of my tears. Jennifer placed a hand on my shoulder. This letter alone doesn't just prove his clarity, it proves intent. They're finished. Then she flipped through the second folder. 3 medical reports, notarized statements, and a certification signed by Grandpa's lawyer a year before his death confirming he was fully competent and deliberate in his estate decisions. It was ironclad, bulletproof. Alta, Jennifer said softly, this isn't just a defense, it's a weapon. By that night, the weight on my chest had shifted. Not gone, but transformed, from fear into something sharper, resolve. Still, the smear campaign didn't stop. The next morning, Vanessa's social media flared again. She posted a cryptic story. Sometimes when people hoard things, it's not about love, it's about control. One of the comments underneath read, "Is this about Alta M?" Vanessa didn't reply. She didn't have to. Michelle's friends from the firm began liking those posts. My mother sent a mass email to relatives claiming I was mentally unstable and under bad influence. Liam's aunt forwarded it to him, worried. Your mom's in full PR mode, he muttered. They're trying to paint you as a liability before you can expose them. I stared out the cabin window at the frozen lake. Then I'll light a match. Jennifer filed countersuits, defamation, emotional distress, attempted fraud, and conspiracy. The next day, the story shifted. The Whisper Network turned into a bombshell. See, Michelle had already told her firm partners that she was helping her parents defend their rights. So when the evidence became public, emails, notarized medical files, and Grandpa's letter, the firm's compliance board called an emergency meeting. By Friday afternoon, she was placed on leave pending investigation. My parents tried to call. I didn't pick up. They switched tactics. Mass texts about how much we still love you. Then, a final one that simply said, "You'll regret making enemies of your own blood." Blood. They said it like it was sacred. But standing there on the dock, I realized family isn't blood. It's choice. Liam joined me, slipping his hand into mine. They're not going to stop, you know, he said quietly. They'll double down before they fall apart. I know, I said, but Grandpa planned for that too. How? I turned toward him, the reflection of the lake flickering across our faces. He left me instructions, just not about defense. Liam frowned. Then what? About what comes after I win. The water rippled as if it had heard me. Because the truth was, hidden in Grandpa's words, was a challenge. Use this place for something that makes their greed meaningless. And I intended to do exactly that. The week after the countersuits were filed, it felt like the entire city started whispering my name, not in sympathy, in curiosity. That's how betrayal travels, dressed as gossip, walking in heels. Jennifer warned me. Once they realize the case is public record, the masks will come off fast. She was right. Michelle's firm issued a polished statement about upholding integrity during internal review. Translation: she'd been suspended. My parents' country club friends started retreating like ants from rain. Suddenly, the people who used to gush about my mother's flair for philanthropy were so shocked by the allegations. At first, I thought I'd feel triumphant. I didn't. I just felt hollow, like someone had scraped the inside of me out with a spoon. Then the calls started. My father left 12 voicemails in a single afternoon, alternating between rage and pleading. "You don't understand what you've done to this family." Followed by, "Please, sweetheart, let's end this quietly." My mother's message came last, the one that made my hands shake. "You think you've won? When you're old and alone and no one calls you, you'll remember who you destroyed." I saved it. Evidence, Jennifer said, but it still burned like acid in my phone. By then, my inbox was a war zone. Reporters, estranged cousins, even Vanessa, of all people, sent an email that began with, "I just want to clear the air." Liam saw it before I did. "Don't open it," he warned. I opened it anyway. "Alta, I'm worried about you. Everyone's saying you're obsessed with that cabin, that you've shut everyone out, even Liam. I know you won't listen to your family, but maybe you'll listen to someone who used to care about him too. Sometimes when you're hurt, you can't see that you've become the thing you hate." I could almost hear her rehearsing it, the gentle tone, the half-truths wrapped like gifts. "She's baiting you," Liam said. "If you reply, she'll screenshot it and twist it." I know, I hit delete, then I blocked her. Still, the damage leaked. Vanessa's influencer friend posted a vague thread about a woman weaponizing trauma to justify greed. It got hundreds of likes before someone in the comments asked, "Wait, isn't this about that cabin case?" Jennifer called me that night. "Ignore them," she said. "We've got bigger moves." "Bigger than my sister losing her job?" I asked. "Much bigger. The judge overseeing your case is connected to Thomas Anderson's wife. That's already raised questions about potential conflicts. If your grandfather's name is in those development emails, it's about to blow wide open." And blow it did. The state attorney's office opened an inquiry after the judge referred Anderson's name for review. Within days, word spread that the developer had been investigated before. Shady land flips, elderly sellers pressured into signing family trusts. In the middle of it all, my parents' social circle imploded. The country club suspended their membership pending legal clarification. My mother's charity board asked her to step aside for now. It was poetic in a way. The world they'd built from reputation was collapsing, not because I destroyed it, but because the truth finally caught up. Still, watching it happen didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing in the ashes of a house you once called home. Liam found me sitting on the dock that night, my phone buzzing with notifications I refused to check. "You could disappear for a bit," he said. "Let Jennifer handle the chaos." "And go where?" He shrugged. "Anywhere with no signal." I smiled faintly. "You mean here?" He grinned. "Fair. But Alta, what happens after the lawsuits? You win, they lose, then what?" The question landed like a seed. Grandpa's letter flashed through my mind. Use this place for something that would make their heads spin. Turn their greed into grace. "I think," I said slowly, "he meant for me to do something with the cabin, not just defend it." Liam leaned closer. "Like what?" "Something healing. Something that gives the place back to people who understand what it means to lose family." He nodded, eyes soft. "Then let's start planning that." And just like that, amid lawsuits and lies, a new idea was born. Not out of revenge, but reclamation. A week later, Dr. Amanda Chen drove up to Lake Harrison. She was a trauma therapist who'd reached out after reading about my case in a psychology forum. She specialized in recovery from family betrayal and financial abuse. She walked through the cabin slowly, tracing her fingers along the cedar walls Grandpa and I had sanded years ago. "This place feels alive," she said. "You could build something here, not commercial, communal, a retreat." The word clicked in my chest like a key. A retreat center, small, intimate, for people whose wounds looked like mine: betrayal, manipulation, emotional theft. Dr. Chen introduced me to a nonprofit called Phoenix Rising that supported trauma healing spaces. They wanted to partner. By the next week, we'd started sketching plans. Therapy circles on the dock, art workshops in the old tool shed, mindfulness trails through the pines. When I told Jennifer, she smiled for the first time in months. Alta, that's exactly what he wanted. It's what they'll never understand, that peace isn't for sale. Of course, peace didn't come easy. A lifestyle blog picked up Vanessa's earlier post, spinning it into an article titled, Heiress or Hoarder? The Woman Who Turned Family Property into a Cult Retreat. They used old Facebook photos, ones where I looked half asleep at bonfires, calling them exclusive images from inside the controversy. I almost laughed. If they knew the real story, that the only thing I was hoarding was sanity, they'd run out of headlines. Liam stormed into the room, waving his phone. They quoted Vanessa as a source. Can you believe this? I can, I said quietly. But the more they talk, the more attention they draw to the truth. Let them. He stared at me. You're not even angry? Oh, I am, I said. Just not in a way they'd recognize. Because Grandpa once told me anger's like fire, dangerous in your hands, useful in your hearth. I was done burning. I was ready to build. By spring, Phoenix Rising approved initial funding. The retreat's name was obvious. The Will Haven Project, a nod to Grandpa Will and to the idea of Haven itself. My parents? They were drowning in their own consequences. Michelle's ethics hearing loomed, and her firm's name was all over the state investigation tied to Anderson's schemes. Jennifer's words echoed as I watched the sunrise from the dock. They built this case to break you, but all they did was expose themselves. I thought of my grandfather's letter again. Fight them not for the property, but for the principle. The principle wasn't revenge, it was renewal. And the first sign of it came the day Phoenix Rising called to say, Alta, you're approved. The first healing retreat begins this summer. For the first time in months, I exhaled. But peace never travels alone. Because the next morning, Jennifer's number flashed on my screen, her voice tight. Alta, she said. The state investigation just went federal. I froze. Federal? They found emails tying Anderson's operation to cases in 3 other states. This isn't just fraud anymore, it's racketeering. And guess who was advising parts of it from the inside? I didn't have to guess. Michelle, I said. Exactly. The water outside the cabin rippled under the rising wind. For a moment, I thought I heard Grandpa's voice again. Calm, steady, inevitable. They'll come for it, kiddo, but you'll outlast them. It started with one headline. State fraud probe expands into multi-state racketeering case. By noon, every local outlet had my family's names in the subtext. Jennifer called it the tipping point. I called it poetic justice. Investigators found that Thomas Anderson, the developer my parents had courted, wasn't just buying up family estates. He was orchestrating an entire network of elder property scams, using insiders to manipulate relatives, forcing sales through trust transfers. And the thread connecting it all? Emails between Anderson's firm and Michelle's office. When federal agents raided Anderson's accounts, they uncovered draft contracts and strategy memos, some written by Michelle herself under her work email. She wasn't just a participant, she was advising the entire operation under the guise of family mediation. Jennifer's voice was low, measured. Alta, your sister isn't just under ethics review anymore. She's facing criminal exposure. I sat on the porch swing Grandpa built, the one that groaned every other creak like it remembered his weight. The world around me was still, the lake smooth, the air thick with spring. It didn't feel like victory, it felt like grief. Because even after everything she'd done, Michelle was still my sister. And part of me wanted to believe there was a version of her that once loved me, or at least the child I used to be. Liam found me staring at the water that evening, my phone buzzing with updates I couldn't read anymore. You don't have to carry her guilt, he said quietly. I know. But you're trying to. He sat beside me, wrapping his jacket over both of us. For the first time, I let myself lean against him fully. No pretense of strength, no defense. Just 2 people trying to make peace with the wreckage. 2 days later, my parents called again. This time, I answered. Alta, my father began, voice rougher than I'd ever heard. They're saying Michelle's under federal investigation. You need to tell them this was a misunderstanding, that she was trying to protect you. Protect me? I almost laughed. She built a case to label me unstable, sold our grandfather's land behind my back, and you call that protection? Mom's voice broke through next, brittle and high. Sweetheart, you don't understand the pressure. I understand perfectly, I cut in. You thought you were smarter than Grandpa. You thought you could turn love into leverage. And now the law's teaching you what he couldn't. There was silence. Then, soft, Almost trembling, my mother said, "You sound just like him." I'll take that as a compliment. I hung up. By the end of the week, Michelle had been arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud and ethical misconduct as an attorney. Anderson, facing decades under RICO, turned on his partners, naming every family that had cooperated. My parents were on that list. Jennifer called again, voice equal parts triumph and warning. "It's over, Alta, but you should brace yourself. They'll lose everything. Their reputation, their finances, maybe even the house." "Then maybe," I said softly, "they'll finally understand what loss feels like." Through it all, I kept building. Dr. Chen moved into the guest house to oversee preparations for our first Phoenix Rising retreat. The cabin buzzed with life, carpenters sanding the old dock, volunteers stringing fairy lights through the trees, the air smelling of cedar and second chances. We called it the Haven Project, and the first participants were already confirmed. 5 survivors of family betrayal and financial manipulation. One afternoon, as I was setting up the workshop space, Grandma Dorothy arrived from Florida, 82, sharp as ever, and still the only person who could look my father in the eye and make him flinch. She hugged me for so long I almost forgot how to breathe. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said, eyes glassy. "And not just him, we all would. You did what none of us could. You ended the cycle." She insisted on donating her retirement fund to help build 2 small guest cabins. "Call it justice," she said, or maybe just interest accrued on karma. As spring turned to early summer, the first group arrived. 5 strangers, each with stories that mirrored mine. Siblings who stole inheritances, parents who gaslit them for money, partners who used love as leverage. On the first night, we gathered around the fire pit Grandpa built with me when I was 12. I told them the story, the real one, about greed, betrayal, and the cost of choosing truth over belonging. No one spoke for a while. Then one woman whispered, "You turned pain into purpose." I smiled faintly. "No, Grandpa did. I just followed the blueprint." But the past wasn't done with me yet. One humid evening, I checked the retreat's inbox and found a letter. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, Michelle's. "Alta, you won. Congratulations. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I never hated you. I hated what you reminded me of. The part of me that loved Grandpa before I started measuring everything in worth instead of value. I lost that girl somewhere. Maybe prison will help me find her again. Do something beautiful with the cabin. If I ever get out, I'd like to see it, even from the road. M." I read it 3 times. Then I tucked it in the same tin box where Grandpa's first note still lived. Because maybe that's what healing is, not forgetting, but knowing where to keep the things that once broke you. Weeks later, Jennifer called with the final update. "Your parents took a plea deal. Fraud and conspiracy. Probation, heavy fines. Their house is going up for sale." I exhaled, not relief, just release. Liam wrapped his arms around me from behind. "You okay?" "Yes," I said, and meant it. Because I finally understand what Grandpa wanted. "What's that?" "To build something that lasts longer than resentment." We stood on the deck as the sun slid down behind Lake Harrison, the water turning gold. The retreat wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. The news coverage shifted from scandal to inspiration. Phoenix Rising announced expansion grants. Dr. Chen smiled at me one morning and said, "This place isn't a retreat anymore, Alta. It's a revolution." And maybe it was. Because every time someone new arrived, shoulders hunched from the weight of betrayal, and left a week later with laughter in their voice, I felt Grandpa's hand on my shoulder again. He'd been right all along. They tried to take everything from me, but in doing so, they gave me purpose. And sometimes, that's the truest inheritance of all. By autumn, the lake began to change color. Burnished copper at dawn, indigo by dusk. The air turned crisp, the way Grandpa liked it when he'd say, "Cold air keeps the lies away." The Haven Project had already hosted 4 retreats. 21 people had sat in the same circle of wooden chairs, facing the fire pit that once burned driftwood and now held confessions. Each one arrived broken in their own way. Each left a little lighter. The cabin, once just walls and beams, had become a living thing again. I'd started keeping a journal, notes about the retreat, sketches of the garden, quotes from participants. Liam helped with logistics, Dr. Chen handled therapy, Grandma Dorothy led morning gardening classes. Some mornings, I'd watch her kneeling in the soil and think, she's teaching them to plant more than flowers. Then came the letter I didn't expect. It arrived by certified mail, stamped from a prison in Illinois. I stared at it for an hour before opening it. Michelle. Alta. There's no good way to start this, so I won't try to sound poetic. I'm serving 7 years. I deserve it. But prison has a strange way of stripping off what's performative. For the first time, I'm not a lawyer or a daughter or the golden child. I'm just Michelle. And I finally understand what Grandpa saw in you, the freedom of not needing to impress anyone to feel worthy. I teach literacy now. Inmates who can't read court papers, women who sign things they don't understand, people who've been manipulated by those who thought they were smarter. Sound familiar? Every night, I reread his letter to you, the one you read at the trial, the one about turning greed into grace. It hurts. But maybe pain is how lessons finally stick. I don't expect you to write back. Just know, if I ever get another chance at life outside, I'll come to see the cabin, not to claim it, but to say thank you. You made something beautiful out of our mess. M. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in Grandpa's old tin box with the rest, the letters that built my map out of pain. A week later, my parents' lawyer sent word that they'd filed for bankruptcy. Their house had been auctioned off. I didn't celebrate. I didn't mourn either. Sometimes justice doesn't feel like victory. It just feels like quiet. Jennifer told me that the restitution fund created from Anderson's seized assets was now partly funding the Haven Project. Full circle, she said. The money meant for greed is healing people instead. That night, I sat by the dock, journal open, moonlight silvering the page. Liam joined me, handing me tea. You did it, he said. I shook my head. We did it, he smiled. You really think this is what Grandpa meant? I looked toward the cabin, the soft glow from the windows reflecting on the lake. Exactly. He didn't want me to protect the past. He wanted me to redeem it. 6 months later, the first documentary about the Haven Project premiered on a streaming platform. The title was simple, Inheritance. They interviewed Dr. Chen, Grandma Dorothy, and some retreat participants. When the camera turned to me, I said something that surprised even myself. People think betrayal destroys you, but sometimes it just clears the noise so you can hear your real purpose. I thought I lost my family. Turns out I was finally making room for the one I was meant to find. The film went viral. Thousands of messages poured in. Survivors from across the country wrote about their own versions of my story. Siblings, parents, partners. The pain was universal. So was the resilience. Soon, Phoenix Rising announced new branches inspired by the Haven Project in 3 other states. Liam and I spent weekends driving to potential sites, old cabins, lakefront lots, small farms. He'd always say, "Imagine the bonfires here," and I'd reply, "Imagine the healing." For the first time in my life, the future didn't scare me. Then, one morning, while reorganizing the workshop, I found something I'd never noticed before. An envelope taped beneath Grandpa's toolbox, brittle with age. The handwriting his. My heart stopped. Alta, if you found this, then you've already faced them. I knew you would. You always had my stubborn streak. By now, you've learned the truth. Family is not inherited, it's chosen. Blood built this cabin, but love is what will keep it standing. One day people will come here carrying the kind of pain money can't fix. Let them. Heal them. That's your legacy. Don't waste time hating those who tried to take it. Use their greed as compost. From rot, new things grow. Love always, Grandpa will. I read it out loud to the empty room. The boards seemed to sigh in recognition. I looked around, the sun filtering through the windows, the scent of pine, the faint laughter from the retreat participants outside, and realized it wasn't just a cabin anymore. It was a sanctuary. A few months later, during the 5th retreat, one of the attendees, a quiet man in his 40s, asked, "Do you ever regret how it happened? Losing your family to find this?" I thought about it for a while. The lawsuits, the humiliation, the sleepless nights, the ache of betrayal. Then I smiled. No, because their greed gave me direction. Their silence gave me peace, and their betrayal gave me purpose. He nodded slowly, tears glinting in his eyes. You turned poison into medicine. Maybe that was it. Maybe that was the truest definition of inheritance. The following spring, we planted a garden at the edge of the property. Every flower bed was named after someone who'd healed here. Grandma Dorothy named hers Forgiveness. Liam named his Beginning. Mine, Truth. And when the lilacs bloomed, the entire air smelled like renewal. I walked to the end of the dock, barefoot, the water calm beneath the morning sun. The world felt balanced for once, like all the chaos had folded into meaning. I whispered, "You were right, Grandpa. I built walls and a roof, but you built the foundation." The wind off the lake lifted the edges of his old letter in my hand, like a nod. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us exactly where we were meant to go. And sometimes the home we fight to protect becomes the heart that saves others.